Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu, and I'm back with another Digimon gameplay video. So today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, and this is going to be a two-deck format where we pick two of the starter decks. I elected to use two of the old starter decks, and my opponent is using two of the newer starter decks, just to kind of see the power level difference between the two, if there really is one or if there isn't. So for those who don't know what two-deck format is, it's basically we just pick two decks and then we play it till we win, and then we're no longer allowed to use that deck. So this way it gives you a decent variety of different types of matchups and scenarios, and it's just overall a really fun thing to do sometimes. So going into game one, alright, my opponent's going to go first. He starts off by flipping over a Motimon, then Digivolving it into a Kunamon, draws a card for Digivolving. And then he is going to set an Izzy, putting me at 2, passing it to my turn. I draw, flip over my Digitama, Digivolve it into Biomon, draw a card. And then I'm going to play Metal Greymon and pass the turn over to my opponent. He starts by drawing for his turn, moves Kunamon out, and then he is going to play a Tentomon to check the top card, and it is a green card, so he gets to add it to his hand. And then he's going to Digivolve into Kawagamon, draws a card for Digivolving, and then he is going to play a Floramon to pass the turn over to me. I move Biomon out of Raising, and then I cast Giga Blaster to destroy his two rookies and pass the turn over to my opponent. My opponent draws, flips over a Digitama, Digivolves it into Kunamon yet again, draws a card for Digivolving, Digivolves it into Kabuterimon to draw a card. Digivolves into Okuamon, draws a card for Digivolving. Then he's going to play a Palmon and pass the turn over to me. I draw, flip over a Digitama, Digivolve into Biomon, draw a card. And then I'm going to play an Agumon and pass the turn over to my opponent. He draws, moves Kabuterimon out of Raising, Digivolves it into Togemon, draws a card, passes the turn over to me. I draw, move Biomon out, Digivolve it into Phoenixmon, and pass the turn over to the opponent. They draw, flip over a Digitama, Digivolves into Rosemon to stun my Phoenixmon from doing anything next turn, and passes the turn over to me. I get a draw, flip over a Digitama, I'm going to set a tie, and then to keep my opponent from attacking my security, I'm going to cast Starlight Explosion, so that way it makes it very hard for him to want to attack my security, and pass the turn over to them. They draw for their turn, Digivolve into Lilymon to check the top 5 to try to find a level 6. Unfortunately, he whiffs, so they all go to the bottom, and passes the turn over to me. I draw, swing with my Phoenixmon at his security. Security check. Needle Spray. So unfortunately one of my Digimon gets rested and Needle Spray goes to his hand. So he's choosing to rest one of my Biomons. And then I'm going to set another tie and pass the turn over to my opponent. They draw. Digivolve into Lilymon. Draw a card. Checking the top 5 to see if there's a level 6. Unfortunately, they whiff. My opponent did misplay, and he was supposed to draw a card before he used the ability. So keep that in mind. And then passes the turn over to me. So I stand up all my Digimon, swing into his security with Phoenixmon. And then I'm going to play a Garudamon and pass the turn over to my opponent. My opponent draws, swings into my security with Rosemon, swings into my security again with one Lilymon, swings into my security again with the other Lilymon, and then he's going to cast an Electroshocker to return the Phoenixmon back into my hand, and then passes the turn over to me. So I'm going to swing at his security after drawing, and I am just going to keep swinging at his security because I have enough bodies on board where that should be lethal. So just as a post-game analysis, my opponent definitely should have been aggressing a little bit harder at my security. And then on top of which, he should have tried to control the board a little bit more, even if it means losing his Mega, because he still had a way better board presence than I did, and he should have took advantage of that fact. Alright, my opponent is going to go first. He flips over his Digitama and Digivolves it into Palmon. Draws a card for Digivolving. And then Digivolves it again into Togemon, draws a card for Digivolving, passing it to me. I start by drawing, flipping over my Digitama, Digivolving it into Gabumon to draw a card, and then Digivolving Gabumon into Garurumon to draw a card. And then I'm going to play Bearmon for 3 and pass the turn over to my opponent. They start by drawing a card and moving Togemon out of Raising area, and then Digivolving Togemon into Okuamon, draws a card for Digivolving. And then they're going to play a Floramon to put me at 1, passing the turn to my turn. So I start by drawing, moving Garurumon out of Raising, Digivolving it into Zudamon, and then having Zudamon's on Digivolve ability take out Okuamon's evolution sources and draw a card for Digivolving, passing the turn over to my opponent. They start by drawing, flipping over their Digitama, Digivolving into Kunamon, draws a card for Digivolving. Then they're going to play Needle Spray to rest my Zudamon down, and then have Okuamon beat up my Zudamon. And then Digivolve into Kabuterimon for 1, passing the turn over to me. I start by flipping over my Digitama, Digivolving it into Gabumon, and then Digivolve my Bearmon into Grizzlymon, passing the turn over to my opponent. My opponent draws, moves Kunimon out of Raising, Digivolves into another Okuamon, draws a card for Digivolving, passing the turn over to me. I draw, move Gabumon out of Raising. I'm going to play a Gomamon to put my opponent at 1, passing the turn over to them. My opponent draws, flips over a Digitama, Digivolves it into Tentomon to draw a card. Then he's going to set an Izzy and pass the turn over to me. I start by drawing, I misplayed and didn't flip a Digitama, and instead I go into Kakumon and pass the turn over to my opponent. My opponent draws, moves Tentomon out of Raising, and then it Digivolves it into Kawagamon and passes the turn over to me. I flip over my Digi-Egg, Digivolve it into Bearmon, drawing a card. Then I'm going to play Hammer Spark to gain a memory, and another Hammer Spark to gain another memory. Digivolve into Were-Garurumon, and then Digivolve again into Metal Garurumon. My opponent starts by flipping over their Digitama, Digivolves it into Kunamon, then Digivolves into Hercules Kabuterimon. Using Hercules' Kabuterimon's Digiburst ability, he is going to rest my Garurumon down, and then he gains a memory off of Izzy's ability. He's going to swing at my Garurumon, and I'm going to block with my Grizzlymon, and then Piercing does security damage. Then he's going to swing at my security with Tentomon. Tentomon loses, so he dies. He's going to swing into my security again with Kawagamon, and again into my security with Okuamon. Unfortunately, I hit a Sorrow Blue, so that does nothing. And then he is going to play a Floramon, passing the turn over to me. I draw. I will swing with Metal Garurumon using the skills that he has to get rid of an evolution source, and then check 2 securities because of his security attack +1, and then he stands himself up because of his ability, and then I'm going to rinse and repeat, removing more evolution sources and hitting lots of security. Unfortunately, he sees a Needle Spray, so my Bearmon gets rested, and then I swing into his security. That would have been lethal otherwise if that had not happened, but unfortunately that's just the way that the game goes. And then I'm going to play Grizzlymon and pass the turn over to my opponent. My opponent starts up by standing up all of their Digimon, draws a card, moves Kunimon out, swings at my security, I let it go through, swings again, I block, and then swings for lethal. So that was definitely a lot closer of a game than game one. It definitely felt pretty good. There was a really good, healthy back and forth. I just don't think my opponent knew when he should be aggressing, but outside of that, it was just a very good back and forth. Had he not seen that needle spray in the security when my Metal Garurumon was attacking, then he probably would have lost, but unfortunately for me, he did see it, so that just turned the whole tide of the game around for him, and he ended up winning the game because of it. Alright, going into game 3, my opponent starts by flipping over a Digitama, digivolving it into Agumon, drawing a card for digivolving, then digivolving it again into Dark Tyrannomon, drawing a card, putting me at 1, and starting my turn. I flip over my Digitama, digivolve it into Bearmon, and then digivolve again into Grizzlymon, and pass the turn over to my opponent. They start by drawing, moving Dark Tyrannomon out of the raising, and then they're going to play an Agumon and pass the turn over to me. I move Grizzlymon out after drawing for the turn, and then digivolve it into Zudamon to remove the 2 evolution sources off of his Dark Tyrannomon. And then I get to draw a card for digivolving and pass my turn to the opponent. They start by drawing, flipping over their Digitama, digivolving Dark Tyrannomon into Metal Tyrannomon, drawing a card for digivolving and passing the turn over to me. I start by flipping over my Digitama, digivolve it into Bearmon, draw a card for digivolving, digivolve it again into Garurumon, drawing a card for digivolving, and then I'm going to swing with my Zudamon, play a Hammer Spark to gain 1 memory, and then I'm going to play a Wolf Claw to separate my Grizzlymon so that I have a blocker, and then passing the turn over to my opponent. They start by drawing, then they're going to digivolve Agumon into Greymon, and then they're going to evolve Greymon into Megadramon, and then they pass the turn over to me. I start by drawing, moving Garurumon out of the raising area, digivolve Garurumon into another Zudamon to remove the bottom 2 off of his Megadramon, and pass the turn over to him. He starts by drawing for his turn. He's going to attack my security with Metal Tyrannomon. It ends up being a mat, so it goes onto the field. Then he digivolves it into Blitz Greymon and passes the turn over to me. Going into my turn, I draw, flip over my Digitama, digivolve it into Gabumon to draw a card, swing at his security with Zudamon, and then skill of Garurumon, getting rid of the Megadramon from the evolution source so he can't block, and then security check happens. Then I'm going to cast Sorrow Blue, targeting his Blitz Greymon so it can't do anything next turn. Then I digivolve into Ikakumon, and pass the turn over to my opponent. My opponent stances Digimon, digivolves into Jazamon, draws a card for digivolving, then digivolves again into Dark Tyrannomon, putting me at 1, starting my turn. I stand up my Zudamon, move out my Ikakumon, and start swinging with Zudamon, remove Dark Tyrannomon from the inheritable, and then swing with Zudamon again at his security, then swing with Ikakumon, and then swing for game with Grizzlymon. So game 3, I kind of just really put my opponent off of his game, on top of which his deck really wasn't helping him because he needed to have blocker to do a lot of things, and he just didn't really have a whole lot of instances of blocker, and the few things that he did have, I quickly got rid of, or he was forced to digivolve up into, just so he could try to push for a higher level Digimon to try to push for game. But again, unfortunately, I think that was more of just a matchup thing, on top of he just didn't have a whole lot of rookies to just keep it up with my level of card draw. So it just kind of spiraled a little bit out of his control, and that's just what happens sometimes. So that's all I have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, or mention any other possible misplays I might have missed. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I will see you in the next video.